We are continuing our elite reaction from the Minnesota Vikings victory over the team they played yesterday, the Atlanta Falcons, where they advanced to 11-2.
I wasn't going to help you. I was just going to let you sit there and think about it.
Sometimes you just have random brain farts. Obviously, I know they played Kirk Cousins, and I talked about it yesterday a little bit, but it's like sometimes you just go through these moments where you just space out.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to have a filler word in there.
It's
Vikings advanced to 11-2.
It's 5:45 in the morning. It's not like you're on 1,000% operation power here. We're just waking up, just getting into it.
Right, we're moving. We're moving in an upward trajectory. Right, we're kind of like Kirk Cousins wow, this is terrible. We're kind of like Sam Darnold's season. Wow, this is garbage. Some people would start this podcast over again.
No.
But you know what? We're not some people. We march on, we march forward, and we make adjustments on the fly, and we figure it out. We're our true, authentic selves, and if you don't like it, suck it. All right, Jake, Vikings win 42-21.
Yep.
Kirk Cousins, 0 touchdowns, 2 picks. 0 touchdowns in now 4 straight games. Sam Darnold, 5 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. In his last 4 games, 11 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. Your reaction to the game, your reaction to the quarterback play, just give me your feeling following the win.
So I would never actually try to look this up and figure it out. Has there ever been a better free agent class than what the 2024 offseason Minnesota Vikings had?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, think about the players that they signed and the success they're having. And I'm talking like Vikings history, maybe all time. Are you talking about a quarterback I was just looking because I was curious. And I get this counts today, or like this counts yesterday, I should say. He's Darnold, 6th in passing yards, 7th in completion percentage, tied for 3rd in touchdowns. QBR, he's not quite as high, I don't think. Where did he go? Doesn't matter. Yeah, he's like in the middle for QBR. But point is, you have a top, whatever you want to say about him. Right now, he's playing like a top 10 quarterback, no questions. You could argue top 5 in the league.
Mm-hmm.
You have Aaron Jones, who is just, again, chugging along and doing his thing. He's 10th in yards with missing some times. There's some time, some games and stuff. So he's been efficient when he's been healthy. Van Ginkel, Grenard, just doing great. Gilmore has been good.
Mm-hmm.
Even Shaq Griffin yesterday was fine. And that's my first takeaway, is that is the best free agent recruiting class that the Vikings probably have ever signed. I'm sure somebody will point out that there was one that was way better. But just as a whole, because, you can count Brett Favre signing him. That was him alone made that class, worth it.
Right.
But the depth of who we signed and how they're fitting this puzzle is perfect. So
that's a good take. I didn't really think about that. Yeah, that is a good take. I haven't even thought about it like that. And you think about the free agency class that was, and we're only predicted to win over under 6.5 games by one of the largest betting market websites there are, and they completely flipped that on its head. So I'll be curious to see, now that they're 11-2 this year, and everyone's going to be, after the season's over, after they win the Super Bowl, obviously, I'll be curious to see what this free agency class does next year and who leaves and who comes back, because Cam Bynum's a free agent and Byron Murphy Jr. is a free agent. And, there's some good pieces on our defense this year that will be free agents. Now, Grenard and Van Ginkel and I guess Gilmore signed a 1-year deal. Shaq Griffin signed a 1. I'll just be curious to see who returns next year and who doesn't. That's how the Vikings replace those guys. Because this offseason, they have more money than they've really ever had in a long time. So I'll be curious to see what the roster reconstruction looks like this summer going towards next fall. Because when you go at 11-2 to start the season and you're winning all these games, well, everyone's going to want to do it again next year. Or if you don't, everyone's going to be wondering what's wrong with the Vikings organization, like how it fell apart, like what's going on here. Chance for Kevin O'Connell to be fired if they don't perform the way that they're performing this year, which is mostly unlikely. Like, they're probably not going to go 11-2 to start next year. So I don't know. It'll be a fascinating thing to watch.
Yeah. Well, I mean, a couple things. One, I got to imagine we're one of the only teams in NFL history. We have 2 of the top 23 quarterbacks in terms of passing yards this year.
Wow.
Because Daniel Jones.
Yeah.
I was just scrolling through and I'm like, Viking. Oh, Daniel Jones. Yeah, like technically. No, I mean, I feel like this season, I think eventually the coaches just kind of need to be replaced as, their voice gets stale and just it happens, right? It's not like it's a diss on the coach. It's hard to do what the Steelers do, which is Mike Tomlin's been there for 20 years, and before that it was Cowher for 20 years, and before that was another guy for 20 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's hard to do, not likely. But if there's anybody I hope the Vikings could do it with, I hope it's KOC, because this season, I mean, he's proven it his whole career so far, but this season is like the most proof you could ever need. And I hope that Vikings fans are realistic, because like you made the point. Are they going to be 11-2 next year? Probably not. I mean, that's very few teams are, and very few teams repeat it year after year after year. It's just not, there's 32 professional teams that are all trying to win games, all trying to get better. It just doesn't happen that you're always elite.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't happen. So I hope we don't turn on him. I know I won't, but I hope they don't. Fans don't turn on him. Next year we're floating around 500.
Well, they're definitely turning on him.
I know. It's my PSA, my public service announcement. Please give KOC the longest, chain of all time, or most grace of all time, because that dude knows how to coach and knows how to get guys to buy in, and it's fun to watch.
13-4 his rookie year. All those one-score wins. Second season, Kirk Cousins goes down as the Vikings are finally hitting stride. Wins multiple games with Josh Dobbs, has the Vikings like 8-4, and then the season collapses because Josh Dobbs eventually ran out of gas.
Ran out of magic.
Came back to life. And now this season with a fully healthy team, they're 11-2. So with a fully healthy roster, all Kevin O'Connell has done is proven that they're one of the top 5, top 10 football teams in the league. So that's the wrap on Kevin O'Connell so far. Yeah. Do you think the Vikings won the Kirk Cousins Sam Darnold swap?
Well, I mean, that's the facts here. Cousins does have, let's see, can we do some on-the-fly math?
Absolutely.
97 more yards passing. Cousins does. Okay.
Yeah.
He, Darnold has 13 more touchdowns and 5 less picks. Yeah, we won. I think it was it the Bill Simmons podcast? I think it was Bill Simmons. I think Cousin Sal brought it up. He was talking about there's some sort of stat in the NFL, and I don't know, I probably can't find it, about like how often, or like quarterback speed throwing their passes. Like they're tracking miles per hour of how hard quarterbacks throw their passes now, or somebody is.
They track everything these days.
They track everything nowadays. And he said Kirk Cousins was the only quarterback to not throw a ball over, it was like 32 miles per hour or something like that. And every other quarterback in the league had thrown it that hard.
Interesting.
With the point being, like, and you watch him, right? You could see those, but whether it's his Achilles or just age or probably a combination of the two, he does not have the same zip on his ball. I mean, you watch some of those like out passes and those corners that he's throwing, and they just kind of wobble and float.
They're lollipoppy.
And they just don't. And, he's still accurate. I mean, he's still throwing it to the right places, to the right reads, even, right? It's just those throws don't have the same juice on them that 13-4 from 3 years ago Kirk did, where it was just zing, 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 zing. I mean, that was fun to watch because he was so accurate. made the right read so often. And with good receivers, which Falcons have fine receivers, he's zipping it around and just hitting guys, timing throws, all that sort of stuff. And he just can't do it to the level that he's used to. And what the announcers say, that was his third scramble of the year was yesterday. It was called back on holding, I think. But
right,
like if you're not going to move and you throw floaters, like what do you bring into the table at that point?
Mm-hmm. And that's something that Sam Darnold adds that Kirk Cousins can't. The long touchdown pass to Justin Jefferson that, I would say was the play of the game just because of what Darnold did in the backfield. Avoiding defenders, eluding defenders, and then heaving one down the field as every single Minnesota Vikings fan is just saying, run for the first down, run for the first down, run for the first down. Mm-hmm. Well, Jefferson's wide open. He walks into the end zone. Don't listen to me, Sam Darnold. And that's something Kirk Cousins could never do.
He has 194 rushing yards, Darnold does, which I know probably doesn't seem like a lot, but that's
quite a bit.
That's quite a bit. Think about how many first downs that is.
It's not nothing.
Right. Again, if you look at Kirk Cousins, he has essentially zero,
Mm-hmm. Right.
So, yeah, that's keeping plays alive, scrambling around. Again, that's broken plays. You have to cover a guy like Jefferson or Addison or even Hawkinson while you're scrambling around and, all of a sudden you run into the left, but then he scrambles right, and all of a sudden Jefferson's run to the right too, that kind of stuff where it's like unpredictable situations that you have to guard guys in. That's really, really hard to do.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah, you don't have to be Michael Vick out there, but if you can just run just that little bit, it makes such a huge difference. And Darnold
does make it, and they're backbreakers to the defense.
Yeah,
you cover everyone down the field. And how many times did this happen to the Vikings? Even Jay Cutler, as the former Bears quarterback back in the day, you would. I think about him because you don't think of him as a running quarterback, but there'd be times where the Vikings coverage would be amazing, and they would be covering the Brandon Marshalls of the world. And somehow Jay Cutler would find a seam and he'd run for 10 yards. It's like, I forgot that he could run. Like no one expects him to run. And then he bust one out for 10 yards or 6 yards for a first down. Like that's all you need to do. It's not like you need to run it consistently, but just to have the threat of being able to do it, give your team a first down that it's a backbreaker is a huge deal. And Sam Darnold offers that.
Yeah, no, it's we've kind of touched on it a little bit since the beginning of the season, right? We kept saying how good does for the record, I was just looking up quick. Cousins had 0 rushing yards this year.
This year?
This year, yeah.
What? Wow, that's crazy.
25 for us last year. He peaked at 156 one of the years with us.
So that's crazy.
But he has 0. 20 carries for 0 yards, technically. That's what it said.
All right. 2 theories. Call me insane or sane for these. It was not coincidence that Kevin O'Connell and Sam Darnold had their career game against Kirk Cousins and the Atlanta Falcons. I think it was purposeful that Sam Darnold was unleashing the football down the field more than he's ever had this season. He threw bombs to Addison multiple times, a bomb to Jefferson. 5 touchdowns, a career. It's not like he threw 2 touchdowns, 3 touchdowns. This is 5 touchdowns. I think if any quarterback is going to throw 5 touchdowns in the league, you have to be extremely intentional about that guy getting 5 touchdowns. And it just happens to be Kirk Cousins, who left because he didn't want the contract that the Vikings were offering.
Yeah.
I think there's a little something there.
Again, I don't have the stats in front of me, but I know Burrow threw 5 twice this year, and I'd be curious. I don't know if anyone else has this year. So it's 5 touchdowns, right? Like you said, it's rare and it's intentional. You got to be, but you also have to be firing, right? You have to be accurate.
It's true.
You have to be on all those sorts of things. I think we forget about they're professional athletes, so it just kind of seems like there's that disconnect. You wonder. There's no question in my mind that Darnold was extra motivated. KOC was extra motivated. Even the Vikings defense, right, to go sack him. all that sort of thing. Get interception off him, that kind of stuff. It plays a role. I mean, especially in the month, year after year, season after season, game after game, it can be kind of a lull a little bit. And I'm sure they had a little extra space to them this year. Or this week, I should say. That's for sure.
Yeah, for sure. And then my second theory, the Minnesota Vikings offense goes as much as Sam Darnold targets Jordan Addison. And the reason why is because, Justin Jefferson requires all the attention, requires 2 to 3 guys shifting towards his side, covering his area of the field on almost every single play. And when that happens, Jordan Addison, who's playing a wide receiver 2 role in a wide receiver 1's body, has one-on-one coverage. So you got to target him. And I think that's the shift that we've seen from Sam Darnold. Earlier in the season, he was good. Mid-season, he was tanking because he had tunnel vision towards Justin Jefferson. And now what we've seen recently is the ascension of Sam Darnold because he's targeting Jordan Addison more. He's getting him more involved. He's throwing him the ball as Jefferson commands 2 guys, 3 guys towards him. Yep. So now that we're seeing, it sounds counterintuitive, target Addison more over Jefferson. But when you lay it out there, I think it makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you're just talking about balance, right? I mean, it's like any sport anywhere. Like in basketball, if you have one absolute stud and no one else gets involved, you can just key on that stud, right? You need the second scorer to help alleviate the pressure for that main scorer so they can start scoring. Same thing with the NFL, right? I mean, it's if you get Addison the ball and you prove that he's a legitimate threat, 3 touchdowns yesterday, you suddenly can't help Jefferson quite as much his way because you got to honor the Addison side of it too. So, I mean, that's tough to cover. I will say Jesse Bates had one of the worst games, the Falcons safety, that I've maybe noticed from an NFL safety where he made some poor choices. Like the one Jefferson touchdown when Darnold scrambled, the one you're talking about, like he left his deep safety position to try to run up and get Darnold and just left Jefferson wide open. The corner was like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
But
Jefferson was wide open like right away too.
Yeah.
They showed the replay.
Yeah.
And before Darnold could scramble to his right and buy time, Jefferson was a broken coverage immediately.
Yeah,
when they showed it on the TV.
Yeah. For perspective, quarterbacks to throw 5 touchdowns this season include Burrow, did it twice, and Darnold once, Lamar Jackson once, and that's it.
Wow. So, yeah, Sam Darnold is now in that category. And did you say Josh Allen was in that list?
Nope.
No, Josh Allen?
He had 6 yesterday, but I think 3 were rushing and 3 were passing. So that's it's a whole different category. He scored like 50-some fantasy points for all you fantasy people out there.
That MVP conversation is getting interesting, especially after Darnold's game.
I think it's going to be Allen just because they're
I think so too. He's the guy this year.
Yeah, it's so much of it is narrative, and Lamar's 100%. Had it before. Mahomes isn't having good enough stats this year for, even though the record's obviously elite. Goff is similar. It's like he's not elite enough. It's kind of like, Josh Allen's been in the mix so many times, like it's his time now.
100%.
And his stats are good, don't get me wrong. I mean, he's like, obviously he's like worthy of it.
The MVP award bothers me, like, because of that reason. Yeah. It's like, it's such a reputation award. It just goes to the player that they think deserves it now. Like in every sport, not just the NFL, like NBA, Michael Jordan should have won MVP every year he was in the league from 1989 to 1998. LeBron James, the same thing. He should have won MVP for like 10 straight years. Of course, they got to spread it around, give it to somebody else.
Well, like Russell Westbrook winning it when he had the triple-double year. It's like that wasn't even Russell's best year. Or Westbrook's best year. But it was like, he's so awesome getting a triple-double.
Right, even though he's shooting like 28% from the field.
Yeah.
All right.
I don't know. I mean, Allen he's 11th in yards, 23 touchdowns, only 5 picks. And then obviously the rushing is where he's the difference maker.
Yeah.
So.
The next question, and I think we have to think deeper about this question now that the Vikings are 11-2. How much are you buying them as Super Bowl contenders? Because you look at the record 11-2, and you must look deeper than their record to think that they're not Super Bowl contenders at this point. Because 11-2, one game behind the Detroit Lions, everything would point towards the Vikings being Super Bowl contenders. Darnold, 28 touchdowns, 10 picks. Everything's coming to life right now for the Vikings offense.
Elite defense, yeah.
Elite defense. Like, on paper, everything is pointing towards Super Bowl contenders. The only thing that would make us think that they're not Super Bowl contenders is a theory of Sam Darnold not being able to perform at this level in the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, I'm all the way bought in.
You're bought in 100%.
I'm all 100% bought in. I got a stake on Darnold Island. Yeah, we're all in.
Okay.
Now, it doesn't mean I think they're going to, obviously, but just like when you're listing the teams that realistically could, you go Lions, yes. Eagles, yes. And then you're going Vikings, yes. I mean, they're the third best team, and there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, if you look at their path, they probably have to go to the worst. The Lions' schedule, they have a couple tricky ones left.
They do. They got the Bills next week.
The Bills next week, and if all of a sudden the Bills kind of need to win that to stay with the 1-seed race. So they're going to be going out, and so, you never know. It could get the division, but assuming we end up second in the division, you got to go on the road to the fourth best division winner, probably the Bucs or the Falcons again, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
It looks like the NFC West will have somebody that's a little bit better than them, like in terms of the Rams or the Seahawks might end up with a better record. So, so you have to win an away game, which is not easy to do, no matter who you're playing in the playoffs. But then after
then it means you avoid Detroit second round.
Then you're avoiding Detroit in the second round. You got Philly more than likely. So
that's true. Well, that's hard too.
yeah, our favorite.
We never beat Philly on the road.
No,
so that's tough.
So that's the biggest hindrance, is that they're not going to have home field simply because their division.
But they still could if they win.
Still could. Yes, correct.
If they beat Green Bay at home, beat the Packers at home, and basically Week 17 or Week 18 versus Detroit could be for that divisional 1 seed.
Yep,
it's crazy.
And I would be interested to know what the tiebreakers end up being in terms of like if we both end up, what are we right now? We're 12.
We're 11-2.
11-2.
Mm-hmm.
So if we're going in and we each have 2 losses, let's say, the lines drop next week, and we split so that we both have, or, whatever. Point is, if we both have 3 losses.
Same record, right? Yeah.
Yes, that's what I was getting at. And we're 1-1 against each other. I wonder, I haven't paid attention to, I guess it's usually division record, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Whatever. But anyway, it should be an exciting finish. And I'm bought in. They could make a run. They have a good enough defense. Their offense is balanced enough. Running the ball, passing the ball. Darnold has played in some big games and not crumbled for the most part. Like, he's good enough to get it done. Doesn't mean he will. Doesn't mean I'd bet on it. But they at least are in that conversation, which is all that matters.
Right. They are in the conversation right now. And for the longest time, I've said that they are not Super Bowl contenders. Just based on the theory that Sam Darnold will melt eventually, and then kind of when it comes playoff time, you're in a new spotlight, and it's a bigger moment. Like, the pressure is huge. He's never been in the playoffs before.
Yep, that's hard.
Besides a backup on the Niners, and that's where I keep on struggling, because paper, everything looks good, but you know what? I'm 100% bought into the Minnesota Vikings are Super Bowl contenders right now at 11-2. And I'm very cautious about this statement, because I feel like anytime I make statements like this, then the Vikings all of a sudden go crashing down. Like, they lose their best player to injury. They lose against the Bears. They lose against Seattle. They lose against Green Bay. They finish the season with 4 or 5 straight losses. And before the season, I said they were 5-12. Well, they more than doubled that record.
Yeah.
I think 5-12.
Yeah.
Well, they flipped that on its head. Well, now that I'm going the reverse way, I'm scared that they're going to reverse the other way. So, I'm not a jinx guy, but it's happened before.
You look at the odds; they're 6th. They're 6th. Can you name the 5 teams ahead of them?
Chiefs, Bills. Lions, Eagles. Let me run through my Pittsburgh Steelers.
Nope, they're The Steelers are 8th. For the record, the Lions are 1st.
Okay.
Ahead of the Chiefs, which makes sense. I mean, I'm not saying, but just it's still crazy to see that and actually process it that the Lions are 1st.
Baltimore Ravens?
There you go. Yeah.
Okay. And they're a tricky team this year because everyone loves the Ravens. They're 8-5. It's not like they're putting up as Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson, that duo is unstoppable. They're 8-5.
Yeah, it is kind of weird. Yeah.
So
I would put they got Ravens probably, but again,
they got a tough game at the Giants next week.
Yeah. In a playoff game though, when you have Lamar running around, like
it's true.
It's hard.
It is. You're right.
Now, maybe end with this here, unless you have something else.
No, go ahead.
I don't know, and obviously we're not there. We don't know all the conversations, whatever. I saw a report yesterday, Shefty on ESPN or something said the Vikings and Darnold have not had any long-term conversations, contract conversations.
Yeah,
which makes sense. I mean, I get it's not something you're going to try to worry about in the middle of a good season, but
yeah.
I feel like the Vikings are going to be, if they don't sign Darnold, I feel like that'll be a huge mistake.
Really? Wow.
Unless he is like astronomically expensive.
He's going to be astronomically expensive, I think.
But I like, even if he's just expensive, I think you have to sign him.
Really? I love that.
If he's like, if someone pays him like he's Kirk Cousins or like he's, any of the top 10 guys, then you can't. But if he's gonna be like expensive for us in terms of like, yeah, it's a lot more than we were expecting, but he's still in that 10 to 15th highest paid quarterback range. Give or take a little bit, but just somewhere.
Even with McCarthy on the roster.
I think even with McCarthy on the roster, I just don't think you can. What's the old phrase? Like, one in the hand is worth two in the bush, right? We can say what we want about looking at JJ and what we might have and what he could be and all these things, but when you have a guy that's literally proving it and saying, like, showing you with his play, I am a top 5 to top 10 quarterback, depending. How do you not?
It's a good point.
How do you not bring that back?
I mean, it's a risky. This is a decision that gets people fired.
Yeah, it is, and for everybody, right? Yeah, if you bring back JJ, if you go with JJ and he's awful next year, then
see ya. Hot seat immediately.
Hot seat. Yep.
Yeah. And especially if Darnold goes out and has a successful run with another team. If he fails with another team, I think you're okay. If he goes to the Raiders and sucks, well, it's like, well, we got one good year out of him, and yeah, that's a good take. I love that take.
The risk reward too. Like, if Darnold is bad next year, you have JJ, right? Like, if Darnold regresses, you pay a lot of money and that part will stink, but you can still switch. Like, you can still adjust. If JJ's bad, you got nothing. You got maybe Daniel Jones if that's who they resign as backup. But
it's true.
You know what I mean? Like, it's just people get so caught up. And I know we spent a first-round pick, and I know he's supposed to be the future, and he hopefully still will be at some point, whether that's next year or ends up being 3 years from now. But if you can get Darnold on a 3-year deal for, even if it's 3 years, 120, 100, something like that, and just, see if he's got this magic for another couple years, and then JJ can come in, maybe 2 years from now, or even if it ends up being 3 years, because Darnold is playing at such an elite level, you have to keep playing. It's just the idea of what could be gets people so excited, and I get it. Because it is exciting, right? You don't know. Hey, Jay, we have
the anticipation,
right?
The
anticipation, like, what's he going to be like?
Rookie contract, quarterback is surrounded team.
Rookie contract,
you spiral your mind. Yeah.
And I get it. Again, it is exciting, but at the end of the day, you have a guy who literally is showing you that he's him, as the kids would say nowadays.
It's true. Right? It's true. That's a good take. I appreciate that take.
Yeah, and because we talked about it, right? Week 1, we're like, or not week 1 probably, but a few weeks in when Darnold was winning, we're like, at what point, like, what does Darnold have to do for us to resign him? Because at the beginning of the season, it was like, there's no chance. No matter what happens, like, and we kind of said, well, if they, 10 wins, if they get 12 wins, if they make playoffs and make a run, like, when do you decide to sign him? I mean, what more does Darnold have to show you?
Right. The problem is his number's getting bigger and bigger.
I know.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, I love that take, and I'm
But
gonna
if
have to
you're
wrap up
Darnold
the
too-
podcast right now. But it's a great take.
If you're Darnold too, though, here, it's just, if you think about it from his perspective, and this will be a.
Ooh.
You gotta go to the bathroom. You can go to the bathroom.
Yeah, so bad. All right, you finish up your take. I'll be right back.
Live, but yet editable. But I'm guaranteeing he won't edit this out. But my point was going to be, Darnold. What was my point? Now I get distracted by Tim going to the bathroom. Tim, I had such a good Darnold point, and then your bathroom just was so distracting. Oh, that's what I was going to say. Darnold, as a individual, like from his perspective, would you rather sign with, let's say, the Raiders, who have proven to be terrible, and will have to. Antonio Pierce is a bad coach; they're going to replace him, if not this year, next year, or the Giants, or who else? I mean, there's some bad teams. Titans, like the teams who need quarterbacks this next coming offseason are awful. So if you're Darnold, let's say the Raiders are a good example. Do you sign a 3-year, let's say 3 years, $150 million to sign with the Raiders? It's like, what is your career going to be for the next 3 years if you're playing with the Raiders? Do you trust them to keep you as a good quarterback? Do you trust them to put the right pieces around you? All those sorts of things. I certainly wouldn't. So if the difference is 3 years, $150 million with the Raiders, or 3 years, 100, again, let's just say 100. It's probably low, but 3 years, $100 million from the Vikings. Do you give up that $50 million? I know it's a ton of money, obviously, so that's an impossible question to answer because that's a lot. But 3 years, $100 million, maybe the Vikings are able to do a bigger guarantee than the Raiders or something like that. Like, why? If you're Darnold, why wouldn't you sign back with the Vikings when you have this proven season, right? Depending on how this ends, but 11-2 at a minimum, and then you hope they make a run. And he's had more success than anywhere else in his entire career. All these things. How do you not get tempted by, even though it's a little less money, to signing back with the Vikings to, see if you can run it back? Only 27. I mean, that's most quarterbacks are hitting their prime at 27. 25, 26, 27, 28, 29. Sometimes 29, like I said, later than Darnold. So why don't you run it back with him? And then from his perspective, run it back with us, because, again, this is easily, he's got 9 more touchdowns than he's ever thrown. He's still got less picks than his first 4 years. It's nuts.
I'm back.
It was elite content while you were gone. I did manage to fill the whole 2 minutes.
It sounded like it. I could hear you through the headphones
when
I was in the bathroom a little bit. I couldn't quite hear what you were saying, but I could hear your voice going.
Yeah. The summation is simply, if you're Darnold, from his perspective, right? Obviously, the Vikings, you should want to sign him back for as cheap as possible. But if you're Darnold, I was just saying, if the Raiders offer you 3 for $150 million, let's say, and then the Vikings offer 3 for $100, just making up numbers, but if we can offer a little less, from his perspective, how do you not sign with the Vikings and give up? I know it's a lot of money to give up, but you're at a stable place that you've had the best year of your career. You have a coach you trust, an offense with elite weapons. You're only 27, so you have prime left. Like, most quarterbacks hit their prime at 27. You go to the Raiders.
It's a good case.
The Raiders are going to fire their coach soon. They have Brock Bowers, and that's it for weapons. They have no running backs and no receivers that are worth even mentioning. Really, I mean, they're all NFL players, but you know what I mean, on that elite status. Why would you want to go somewhere where you're going to be bad, or your team's going to be bad, or both? Right,
you're not going towards a Super Bowl roster like the Vikings roster.
Right, and if somebody that is Super Bowl ready, I don't even know who that would be, right? But somebody that's elite does want to sign you for more money, then yeah, of course it makes sense. But the teams who are going to be interested in a guy like Darnold, Carolina, Raiders,
the Raiders, the Giants,
maybe the Titans, the Giants,
maybe the Browns.
Yeah, maybe Browns, maybe, but even them.
Although they're paying Deshaun Watson all that money, they can't afford 2 quarterbacks on that salary.
Right, correct, they can't. Yeah, I don't think. Yeah, there's no way. So who is out there? I mean, yes, the bad teams can give him a lot of money, but if the Vikings again can get him on it'll still be a lot of money, but a deal, right? A deal, quote unquote. It's not 1 year, 10 million, but even if it's 30 million a year, 35 million a year, I still think you got to do it.
Yeah, I like that take. I don't think he will. I think he takes the biggest splash he can get. But maybe he goes the anti-Kirk Cousins route,
right,
and passes up a little bit more money to stay with a winning organization.
Yeah. Or depending on the offers too, do you just franchise tag him?
Yeah, I saw that out there.
If he doesn't have any offers that he loves from, like, again, maybe the Raiders, let's say the Raiders are the only one, and it's 3 years, 150 million. He's not happy about it. Yeah, does he just take a franchise tag? Probably not, but like that'd be 1 year for, I don't know, 50 million almost or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Right.
45. Yeah. I don't know what the current rate is, but whatever.
Probably something like that for a quarterback.
Like it's a top 5 average, so whatever that would be.
Right. Yeah. I could see him going to the Rams if Matthew Stafford retires after the year.
Right. So that'd be a perfect example. If the Rams offer him a big contract if Stafford retires, if I'm Darnold, I do go. Right. That's something I would leave for sure. That's a good example of a team that's worth leaving for if they offer more money. The Vikings are obviously a better team, but like, you trust McVay. They got Cooper Kupp and Nakua and Kyron Williams, and a defense that with a few more pieces could be elite again. So
right. Yeah.
There's a lot of factors at play here. We don't know, but
Jets, I love it.
Right, the Jets come after him. You're not going back to the Jets. Like, there's no way.
yeah.
Like, there's no way. I don't know who the team's going to be and for how much money. It'll be the interesting thing.
Right. Well, there's going to be a team out there that tries to convince him, yeah, we can recreate Kevin O'Connell and Jefferson and Addison and Hawkinson and Aaron Jones, and maybe he buys it, maybe he doesn't. But from our perspective, there's really no other team out there that can recreate those players and coaches on a single roster.
Yeah.
So I'll be curious to see how it plans out. But
Jacob, know how guys evaluate money either too, right? What's the difference between 120 and 140 or 150? Some people, that's everything. Some people go, I can do plenty in my life with 120.
100%. Or you're Juan Soto and you signed a 15-year, $765 million contract.
Baseball's so weird.
Isn't it? Oh, man. That's crazy.
Silly.
Ugh. Wow. Anyways, Jacob, thank you for your takes.
Yeah, thank you, Fran.
Appreciate it. You delivered today. I like the re-signing Darnold message that you were going with. You convinced me that. I wanted the Vikings to re-sign him too, but like at the same time, I'm just on the case that he won't take the contract on the Vikings.
Yeah, that's the concern. And again, I get it, but you just hope they can find a way to get it done.
Right. All right, everyone. Thank you for going on this journey with Jacob and I today. Jacob, thank you for it all.
Thank you, friend.